he's going to find someone.
So thanks everybody for coming tonight. Tonight we're talking about dairy innovation, and we're not just going to limit the discussion purely to technology, although we will talk a little bit about the use of technology in the space. We're going to talk a little bit more broadly about some of the challenges and some things that possibly could be solved with technology, some things that need to be solved other ways, and some interesting things that are happening in space. My name is Jeff Bourne. I'm one of the co-founders of Automatic Bakery, and tonight we've got Lachie Sutherland and Chris Kendall, both of whom are working very closely in the dairy industry here in Victoria.
Yeah, so Lachie Sutherland's my name. I'm at Colac, 10 k's west of Colac. We milk about 380 cows. It's a family farm, so I'm third generation on the farm. My wife and I operate the farm with 2 labour units plus myself, so 3 labour units. And I guess if you broke it into a 40-hour week, there's about 4 labour units operating the farm, so we do more than a 40-hour week. Yeah, so that's my story. I've been operating the farm as my own entity for 13 years now. So yeah, purchased into the farm to allow my parents to move off farm. Yeah.
So it was your parents' farm?
Yeah, so originally it was my grandfather's farm.
Okay.
Yeah, so growth, and he originally milked about 60 cows, and so over that time my father doubled it, and then got to about 300 cows, and then we've grown it a little bit further. So that level suits us in terms of, I guess, pasture intake. We're not irrigated, so we don't have access to water when we want it, compared to some areas of the state. We rely heavily on rainfall and supplementary feeding, which puts us at risk of commodity price. It's not only of our product we sell being milk, but also our inputs as well.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I'll come back to, I know that you've obviously come into the city for this evening, and you're in fact going away, and I'll actually come back and touch on that in a minute. Chris,
not too much, right?
No. Just the practical aspects of what that means.
Yep.
And Chris, if you'd like to just give people a bit of an overview of your background.
Yeah, my name is Chris Kendall. So my background is probably more in the dairy science aspect. Went to Haileybury College, how I know Brendan over here, which is a great school. And then moved on to Melbourne Uni, and then went overseas to the US to do my postgrad in vet and dairy science. And so managed some large corporate dairies in the US, and then come back here. Obviously, doing all that education, I went to school for a long time, about 8 years. And by getting that, I suppose, the knowledge, I started to manage farms in the US and come back to Australia for about 3 years and manage dairy farms. So I try to get the balance of both knowledge and that practicality, because what you learn in the textbook obviously doesn't apply in the real world. So I've had my own dairy farm for about 4.5, 5 years, and now I'm in more of a consultancy role, and I'm starting to use a lot more technology now. We've got these, I suppose, cow Fitbits, we call them in the city. We call them in the city, we call them cow Fitbits. They can relate better to that. So just with technology and what's coming out, these cow Fitbits obviously tell you a lot about what's happening with cows and how you can improve your management and make decisions on the spot, and obviously improve efficiencies in terms of herd health and obviously labour and productivity. So
what sort of things are they measuring?
So they're measuring eating, rumination, ear temperature, and activity walking. So the temperature on the cow's ear, if a cow gets sick, the blood supply gets cooler, so they get cold. And so normally when an animal gets cold ears, it's not a good sign. So it changes the way we treat animals as well. We can use more preventative medicine instead of using more antibiotics. So you can fix the cow a lot earlier and get it back on track, because normally intake drops and then milk production is obviously the output. So if you can measure the input you can rectify it a lot quicker because the output's about 36 hours behind. So we're using that technology now in the universities in Australia, Tasmania and up in Sydney, Camden. Are starting to use this technology now to see what we can do with grazing behaviour and what cows are doing and how we can improve efficiencies with what they do out in the field. So,
are you tracking where the cows go in the field?
Oh no, individually we just track how much activity they do in a day. But look, when we look long term, whatever happens in the human world, we can apply it to animals a lot. So I work with a company in Europe, and the way it's going is they'll apply calories and stuff like that. They'll be able to do a lot more than what we do. They'll measure the pulse in the cow, and they'll be able to obviously do a lot more. So whatever applies in the human world, we should be able to bring it in the cow world in some form or shape.
Sure. And sort of things like automatic weighing and recording of data and analysing of data, that type of thing. What's kind of happening at the moment that you're sort of hearing about versus what you're seeing?
So I suppose coming from a research background, I love data because it tells you a lot about trends. You can add some comments here, but so I'm really data and trying to justify changes in management to dairy farmers. They don't have all the data that you want. So these type of technology provides that background and the trends of what's happening. You can show the farmer what's happening to individual cows and groups of cows. It's very, very expensive. It's obviously it's one of the, I suppose technology in general, you've got to spend a lot of time. And when you give technology to dairy farmers, some are a lot older generation and obviously struggle to use iPhones, but when you give them pretty good technology, they really struggle to manage it and use it effectively. So I've had the instance that we've used this technology on a lot of farms and the operators just haven't managed it at all and haven't got the best use out of it. But collecting data through weighing, measuring milk yields, all that stuff, if it was cost effective, it's great tools because you can make decisions, real-time decisions straight away, instead of waiting and reacting. I suppose you're more proactive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Lachie, in your day-to-day operations, how are you, recording data and keeping track of things? In a month's time, we will have some guys from AgriWeb coming along and talking about their application. And one of the things that they talked about was automating what people used to use, notebooks and whiteboards to record information. Where are you at with that sort of thing?
Very basic level. I mean, we individually test cows on a monthly or bi-monthly basis to measure yield and also the health of the cow and the health of the udder. So that's mastitis level, cell count. We also have to know how profitable that cow is, and that'll be tracked through taking a sample and analysing fat and protein. So we do that. That's a physical process. It's not done every day, and sure there are mechanisms available that can be done every day, but that equipment is expensive to retrofit, I guess, to a dairy, and the cost of putting it in probably to a new dairy is cheaper, and you may look at doing it. And sure, it would be nice in an ideal world to have that technology as well, so you can use it, and I guess you've got to use it as well. So we don't do that. In terms of cloud-based notepads, mapping, that sort of stuff, fertiliser is spread through a cloud-based program if contractors come onto the property. So once that's done, we receive an update. The moment he clicks off, the fertiliser truck leaves, you get a map with what paddocks he's been in, what rate. So we have to maintain for quality assurance what was put on what paddocks when. And then that sort of software is gradually moving through as companies update their guidance systems on their sprayers and that sort of stuff. You'll get feedback direct in your email of what the temperature was, what the wind speed was, what the chemical was, and where it was applied. So those virtual whiteboards and record keeping, we're still using the old whiteboard.
Yeah.
And I guess I employ one fellow who's a little older than me that still uses the flip phone and is not really right up there with technology, just on the internet, that sort of stuff. So I can't push him. It's probably without it. Whereas on the other side, I employ a 21-year-old trainee, and he'd be right into it. So I've just got to manage that situation.
Yeah, of course.
At the moment.
Yeah.
And in terms of milking, we have a very basic system that captures the cow's identity when it comes on.
Using RFID?
Using electronic tags, and feeds according to a herd test once a month or 1 month of production. Yeah.
So that's captured automatically, electronically into a computer
system. So we can look at how many days in lactation she's been, how much she's been fed in that lactation, that stuff. Yeah. And also heat. Yeah. We have to actually enter when she was on heat, but it'll also tag it when she last cycled, that sort of stuff. Yeah. So it's a fairly old system that we haven't updated for a while.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So
I'm just going through. Just with the complexity, a lot of people don't understand. Like dairy farming, obviously the perception is that cows graze free range and we milk them, and the milk goes to your fridge and you drink it. But the complexity,
it does, doesn't it?
It does. Just
with a few things in between.
Via milk powder at this stage. The complexity, because obviously the soils, pasture management, it's finance, it's herd health. It's a pretty complex business, and people don't understand that. Like he was just talking about, obviously he's using GPS and fertiliser and he's spraying to do his paddocks and just get analysis done on that. It does go to the next point where he's got to measure his soil, make sure he's not over-applying, and then you can get to the level that you can measure, obviously, the output, the grass, how much tonnes you're doing per hectare. So it's a pretty complex model, and all that data can go into your financial models, and sometimes you make a profit and sometimes you don't make a profit, but it's pretty complex. So it's and technology has to be in place now with what's happening in the industry with milk price and just with the cost of labour, that will need more of these tools and technology, because things are pretty tight and you need to analyse every piece of data that you can. Sorry, do you want me to ask me a question?
No, yeah, I just got a question around how you measure how much they eat. I said that was one of the variables.
You can measure, like, so basically a cow can eat a certain percent, and it's all to do with how much access, but it's based on the stage of lactation, but she can eat up to 27 kgs a day, depending on her milk production, whereas a cow that's obviously later in lactation is going to be dry will eat 15.
It's a dry
matter intake. So So data in general in a business going forward in all agricultural aspects is getting real-time data it's just critical to making those business decisions, because it's things are just so tight with margins these days. If you've got that data, you can switch those margins to be better.
And particularly with dairy farming compared to other farming businesses. So a guy grows a crop, but he only harvests once a year. And so his whole year may be focused around that 3 weeks harvest, where he knows his yield then. He can guess and estimate up to that point. Whereas we can adjust an input today and see a change tomorrow, because our product is measured out of the cow, analysed and returned to us via that product we've sold. So it's an instant correlation between what we do management-wise there to what happens tomorrow, output.
And with your dry matter, like, are you past modelling, are you like understand a pivot, or you irrigating?
So I'm rainfall, dry land.
Okay.
So you become, I guess, educated in what the best stage to graze the grass is. So you manage your pastures to obtain the highest intake of the highest quality product you can, obviously not letting it go too rank or not grazing it too short or too hard. So to achieve the 27 kilos of dry matter, if we can't feed that 27 in grass, we have to supplement. So that's, we're constantly monitoring what we've got ahead, how much we can conserve in the spring fill the gap at the other end.
And is that sort of moisture probes and that kind of stuff?
Um,
How do you know what
I wish so. Yeah, well, yeah. Real well. This is real. This is a perfect world scenario.
Yeah, there's. I guess most farmers would be doing it by gut feel. A percentage of farmers would be doing a walk and gauging, so using a plate meter to actually gauge the dry matter. You know, in an ideal world, the drone would go up, fly it every day, IR map it, and email it back to your program.
That's the level it's going to get to.
That's blue sky stuff. But you know, and that stuff is starting to tick around in some levy-funded stuff at the moment. You know, the drone might fly 5 farms in a local area and feed that information back. But for us to be profitable, we've got to manage the cheapest feed to make the milk that we can, and that's the grass. Yeah, and that's in my business. Yeah. So, does it answer your question?
Planet Labs get their 5-metre resolution satellites up that might.
Yeah, and look, there are the CSIRO monitor pasture growth on a shire level, so you can. It doesn't throw any surprises at you. You look at it when it's dry and it's not growing. I freaking knew that. Yeah, and when it's springtime, it's growing like steam, and you can't control it. So I look at that. The interesting point is when you look at that, it has a 10-year history on that CSIRO stuff, and I just have it on my iPad and check it regularly. You can see when you think about last autumn or last winter how dry it was, the different conditions, and compare year to year, and spring to spring, that sort of stuff.
So, Lachie, how far do you look back in terms of you're looking forward? How far you look back in terms of measuring the decisions you made, or sort of reflecting on decisions you made, helping better manage the big years?
Right back as far as I can remember, I guess. You don't make the same mistake twice. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're always looking for an optimum, but economics of feed change too. So whereas it might be viable to feed a certain product one year, for instance, this year barley is heading to the low, nearly $200 a tonne delivered. This time last year it was $300 a tonne, and I didn't feed it last year. So economics change those decisions as well. So you want a long memory in farming.
Well,
you don't forget droughts.
Well, environment and commodity prices is two things we can't control unless we have obviously irrigation and you grow your own commodities. But yeah,
access to the smartphone for us is just, you know, and the ability, you know, we struggle with mobile reception there for a lot of years. You know, and you guys in the city just take it for granted, but you know, to be able to pick up the phone, tap and see, or to get a text message of what a price is once a day, like is just can guide our decisions on what we buy, when we buy, if we buy it ahead of time, if we buy futures or what we do. Yeah. What's that, sorry?
How much grow your own still? How much hay and silage or
60% home grown.
How much is it? Or
What do you grow? 60%?
Own feed? Yeah, we would probably 60 to 70%. Depends on the year. So on my farm, I'd grow in a good ideal year. We'd grow 6.5 tonne to 7 tonnes of dry matter per hectare. So you know, when you look at a year like last year, we struggled to get 4. So if we don't grow it, we've got to buy it. So profitability is affected there. So what's an irrigation guy grow 12, 15, 18? 12. Because he can turn the tap on. But that's a cost for him to run the water. Yeah, he's got to buy the water or pump the water or whatever. So you can, you know, you've got to fill the cows with food to make milk. If you don't put the food in, you won't get the milk out.
It's different to the beef sector because you can, unless you've got a contract with Coles or something, but you can just stop. You don't have to put them through that thing. Like, we're going to milk the cow every day and feed it every day. You can't turn it off. Makes it even more complex. So
yeah, the milk's got to come out. Otherwise, there's health issues, and she's got to get back in calf. So to maintain a lactation, to have a calf every year, obviously and that's a nutrition focus as well. If you're not feeding them too much, or you're feeding them too much good stuff, they won't get in calf.
You mentioned about like your sort of
equivalents for labour units on the farm.
Yep.
What sort of where do you allocate that labour? Is there a bunch of tasks that you wish you didn't have to spend as much time on, or separately, is there a bunch of is there a couple of tasks that you wish you could spend more time on, or not necessarily utilising technology to sort of cut that?
I guess so. If you break it up, immediately you've got 8 hours of labour in the dairy, non-stop.
Yeah.
Every day, no matter what, pretty much on average. So that's 2 guys, 4 hours a day. You can't. I guess you could replace that with technology, but the technology is out there. Perhaps whether it's working correct or not is the issue at the moment.
You mean like a rotating platform?
Oh, robots and all that sort of stuff. I mean, there's robots out there, but there's debate whether it's actually works in some systems, and whether it's suited to systems. There is manual things, I guess. If the robot on the motorbike goes off and gets the cows, well, that knocks half an hour off doing that. There's still manual things like you have to do some fencing, or you have to walk your paddocks to gauge your pasture, or that could be replaced by technology. There's a whole range of things. I guess you can always find an alternative. Yeah, I wouldn't get out of bed, would I? Roll over and click the iPad, watch it on the CCTV. And, I had the discussion with Jeff about, the NBN is sometimes, I guess, gets a bit of a canning in political circles about the waste of money, but the NBN is just moving into my area now, and it's providing, before that, if you wanted internet on our place, you had to get it through NextG, which is expensive, prohibitive, speeds are low. You're handcuffed. It's like being handcuffed trying to use the internet. You can't get data. You can't. Now the NBN's there, you can get higher speeds, cheap. It's subsidised. That's going to be in rural areas. Fantastic.
Yeah. Is that satellite?
And fixed wireless.
Yeah.
Fixed wireless where I am. Yeah, which is pretty good speeds. Fixed wireless, and some of it's satellites, depending on where you are, whether there's a tower or not.
So is there anything that you can't do today that with NBN coming along, you think you'd be able to do in the future? Or you'd like to be able to do?
I reckon some of your monitoring, I don't know how that works, whether that works through web-based programs.
Yeah, so we get real-time data on your animals, so obviously animals move every second, you'll get that data gets built up every 15 minutes, every 5 seconds it goes back, so you need internet for that, so you'll get real
I'll be able to watch Netflix. They say that's pretty good. I don't know. So then there's the other naughty ones.
Repeats of Seinfeld.
Oh well. Yeah, so that sort of stuff, I guess, that tech monitoring.
Yep.
If anything that might have used the phone system, which is quite expensive to use, would be used through NBN.
What about on the processing side? I mean, do you see technology changing your options as far as where your milk goes and what your pricing options are and what your production?
For me, I have a bit of a passion towards risk or averting risk.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it later if you like, but in terms of, my milk's marketed a little bit different to how other milk is. So I sell my milk to a cooperative, or through a cooperative, which I'm a shareholder of, and goes to Buller ice cream, which you probably know. So we receive the same price for every kilo of milk solids every day of the year. It's non-seasonal pricing, it's flat, and it's a year-long contract. So if the ability for me to be able to be contacted or switch in and out of contracts at a moment's notice via a smartphone, sign contracts, emails, that sort of stuff, I guess. Yeah, that would, better connectivity, I guess probably.
So managing financial risk and being able to actually sort of do that on a much higher frequency than you currently can.
Yeah, rather than check your emails twice a day.
Right.
And we've had the ability to do that, I guess, for the last few years, but I employ a company to help me manage that input risk and the output risk as well.
Like blue sky stuff here is, we transport obviously a lot of water and milk, and there's processing capability of taking the water out. I think that would help with costs. If you can do that on a cheap commercial level on every farm, I know you're going to use byproducts of the milk for that, but yeah, man, that's why I think in terms of processing and technology, if you can make something, you can take the water out.
Because you've got chillers and conveyors, I guess, whatever it is, you know, supply chain integrity kind of issues as well, right?
Yeah.
Can I go a bit
It's like you're kicking. You know.
In the take-up of technology and the cost of technology in your industry, is that the larger businesses and family businesses and agribusinesses have the ability to take up the technology faster and the ability to pay for it? Is that going to be the death of the smaller family type business? Because they'll just be like the dinosaur of the industry, that they can't compete with the company that picks up new technology faster and has got the people who implement it faster? Or is there going to be a market segment that small family farm can exploit, that big guys can't, bigger guys can't?
I think there's probably the bigger farms, there's greater benefit in the technology, whereas the smaller farms can manage without it. So it makes their labour costs down, or you know, whereas the whereas the family farm, which is the one dad milking the cows, can, you know, spread over, can manage his way through it. I don't know what your thoughts are there. But that's my thought when you talk about that.
But even just in terms of the supply of your product, a larger operation will be able to go paddock to plate. A smaller operation can't go to that level unless you collaborate.
That's going to be the follow-up question.
Unless you've got something unique. Look, there's some small dairies in Tasmania have done a great job branding their yogurts and Margaret River. Yeah, so it's I suppose when we talk about large, we're talking 1,000 plus.
Yeah, that's what I was corporate farm types.
There could be 15 farms, but yeah, though, if you've got a size dairy like Lachie here, there's that potential to go that paddock to plate. You just got to how you market that and how you process that.
So, Lachie or Chris, is there a tipping point where, when you describe large farmer, where you think the technology will be really an advantage for, like, is there a number of head? Do you think there would need, where you start to introduce technology, it actually does become viable?
Well, initially I think that is when it's beyond the one-man operator.
Right.
So when it starts to rely on people who don't have a vested input that actually have to be paid a wage regularly, I think that's probably that point. And where's that point? 250?
250 cows, yeah.
So that's my thought.
Yeah. And when you look at comparing Australian dairy farms, particularly against best practice and worst practice, do you see that there are other things going on overseas that farmers could embrace here more, or where there's knowledge and expertise here that isn't actually being applied overseas but is really first and best practice here?
You've got more overseas experience than that.
Look, it's I suppose it's not technology. Well, it's probably technology. Obviously, they house cows in sheds, and they can cool the cows and they can control the environment. So our cows are exposed to 4 inches of rain one day and 41 degrees during the summer. So
extreme. In
terms of practices, there's government subsidies in the future or other stuff that helps us get more capital. So that because obviously cows walk a long way, obviously waste a lot of milk, but I see pasture utilisation you might be able to get more tonnes per hectare by growing different crops, but not taking the cow, you might be able to increase your tonnages because there is a certain amount of waste. But it's just most of the stuff overseas is all heavy capital expenditure. So
industrial type farming.
Big sheds. Obviously, they're all got put in biogas all those top.
Do we want to get there? Or do we want to see, does Australia see the product, because I'm from the country too,
Yep.
and that scares me a little bit.
Yep.
That's not the direction where we want to head, right? Is that not what we're saying tonight? We're heading...
Yeah,
I think what we've got now is advantageous to our marketing.
Yeah.
correct.
And all the feedback we hear from our buyers is that we are clean and green.
Yeah.
Because some of the others aren't so clean. They claim they're green. They've had their other
Some
issues.
of those big kind of feedlot areas, so they're not pretty and they don't look very like
But I suppose that that's one of the next, the animal welfare issue in the poultry industry is pretty well known and being sorted out, and then the pig and cattle industry is next. And we're going down industrial farming route now, because in 5 or 10 years' time it's going to be real front.
Well, the others have gone in and out. Chickens have gone in and out. Pigs have gone in and out. I think overseas, and particularly in New Zealand, is nearly the state of Australia. Pretty close. It is actually different. Is it how many Kiwis are there? They're very because the dairy industry is such a huge part of the economy in New Zealand. They're very focused on achieving success, I guess. So there's a lot of money spent on helping farmers with financial products and that sort of thing. You know, they're developing some pretty exciting stuff around farmers being able to manage their risk, taking it away from the people who the farmer sells the milk to, who tries to maintain a higher price, which we've all seen what happened with that, and giving the control to the farmer, giving him the ability to forward sell a product and manage the risk himself, which is what we saw in the grains industry after the single desk and deregulation over here. The grain grower got the ability to control his own risk. Some of them burnt themselves pretty badly, and a lot of them came through to manage it and took out the highs and the lows and knew what their cost of production was and grown.
What you just said there, is that I suppose the accepted, because I know a few dairy farmers and they're new that they are being protected.
I think being married to a banker and having dealt with state agribusiness managers and asked these state agribusiness managers why there is not a product for me to be able to manage my price risk on my commodity that is traded worldwide, the biggest export value out of the Port of Melbourne, and they say, isn't that the cooperative's job to manage the risk for you? We all know where that went. I think the game's changing. It is changing, and it's just slow, and it'll create demand will be created through people wanting to manage their own risk.
Yeah. And Lachie, do you see in 5, 10 years out, and Chris, greater consolidation of operations, or do you see, current enterprises or current farmers being able to manage it more efficiently, more widely, and so that they're got a sustainable business model?
I think we're already seeing linkage between users and the growers, and whether that be by actually buying the farm so they can secure a product and not have a worry that they have to buy it on the traded market to avoid the volatility. We're also seeing people who used to buy the milk off the larger cooperatives actually developing a little supply base, like Buller, which up until 2 years ago they never collected milk direct, except when they made a bit of cream back in 1932. But there's these direct linkage things going on, and whether that being able to market it, whether it's a marketing gimmick that this is our cows and this is where it comes from, or it's we're scared we're going to lose supply or lose control of our supply. I think corporates have been and still will continue to be investors, and overseas, well, they're the only ones with the money at the moment to buy farms. because the poor old dairy farmer can't do it because he's making milk cheaper. He's selling the milk cheaper than what he can produce it for at the moment. And when we say that, that is at this snapshot moment in time. The year's milk price goes for a year, so you don't actually know what your price has been until the end of June.
So is that you now producing milk for below cost?
At this moment in time, I'm producing it below what I'm selling it for. I'm making profit today. That's because there's plenty of grass going in my diet, not much grain, so there's a margin on mine. But when it gets to January, and I'm having to feed board-in fodder, a kilo or two of grass and 4 or 5 of a summer crop that's cost me to grow, if the price hasn't risen by then, that's when I'll probably make a loss. So that's how we manage our way through it. Yeah.
Interested in the cows that you use, Chris. What would you say is some of the biggest problems with that current tech, or what would you like it to be doing that it's not?
Well, one of the current problems is we've got flies in Australia, and that created a bit of chaos, but
In what way?
they falsify some emotion.
Yeah.
Like,
They flap their heads.
Yeah.
so it's all
That simulates walking.
So false positives.
Yeah, false positives.
Yeah. What's the accuracy of the?
No, when there's no flies, it's like 99 points. They're all very accurate, like 99%.
Yeah.
So.
For the actual task though, the manage the heat detection.
Yeah, and sickness. So
Yeah.
it's very accurate. The most return on investment comes through not giving cows antibiotics and treat them with. It's basically what we do now is that a cow. It's like you having a hangover. You'll just have a Panadol or Nurofen. The temperature on the if a cow gets a temperature, we use antibiotics, which is not that often, but a lot of farmers will give cows antibiotics, and that cow doesn't have a temperature. So we're using a lot more anti-inflammatories now to get the cow just to give her a Panadol virtually, and she stays within the herd, and she's obviously the milk's not discarded.
Yeah, so the moment you give them an antibiotic, it's non-saleable milk, so you look the cost of the drug and the cost of the milk till the withhold's over, you're gone.
So it's a bigger benefit on that animal health side, not the heat detection.
No, both. Yeah, both. Yep. Because in the cattle world, not all cows will jump on each other and show visible signs, which we look for. So they've got internal signs and changes. So this picks up all internal changes that humans can't see.